You guys, it is late September and I am still sweating in my apartment. How is this possible? Oh my gosh, I feel like in Boulder this year, it's been in like the high 80s to 90s from April until now in late September. I'm so ready for cooler weather. Our leaves are changing here right now. It's so beautiful, and yet still it's freaking hot. I am over it. So, in honor of trying to get the cool, crisp weather to come out of the woodwork, come back, join us in autumn weather, we would appreciate it. I want to talk today about how to keep yourself warm while backpacking. I'm really not a winter backpacker, but I have spent plenty of days and nights on trail where it's been below freezing, whether that was in the fall or in the early spring. And so as we're going into fall, into the colder months of the year, I wanted to give you some tips on how to keep warm while backpacking and while you're camping out backpacking. Hey guys, if you don't know me, I'm Audrey. On trail, I'm known as Glow Stick. In 2018, I quit my job in Washington, D.C. to thru-hike the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. It was freaking amazing. And now I live in Colorado where I backpack all the time. And we actually sometimes will even get snow here in the mountains in the middle of summer. So gotta always be prepared for that colder weather. And I know a lot of you who are newer to backpacking probably really haven't spent any cold, below freezing days or nights out on the trail, or even close to freezing days and nights on the trail. So I wanted to give you some tips in case you're backpacking this fall, or you're starting a thru hike maybe in the early spring or late winter, and you can use the tips on how to stay warm. So let's get into them. Okay, number one, when you're out on trail, hiking all day, you wanna wear moisture wicking layers. These are clothing materials that are gonna pull the sweat away from your body so that it can evaporate and dry and not keep you soaked all day long. So one material you want to avoid is cotton. You don't want to be wearing cotton clothing because cotton soaks up moisture and just holds on to it. So it takes a while for cotton to dry. So if you're out backpacking and you've got a cotton shirt and that's your only backpacking shirt and you get it wet, it's probably gonna be wet for quite a while. So you wanna wear things more like polyester or merino wool or bamboo, things like that. So I always wear multiple layers when I'm out backpacking, especially in cold weather. So I would usually have, a tank top, a long sleeve moisture wicking shirt, possibly a layer to put over that, but I would usually save that next sort of mid layer for camp. And instead, if I'm still cold wearing that long sleeve shirt, I would probably instead wear my raincoat because it provides wind protection, rain protection, and it sort of insulates a little bit. And then I would probably be wearing a pair of hiking pants. And again, if I'm still cold or it's raining or it's snowing or something like that, I would wear a pair of rain pants as well for that same reason. I always wear sock liners and hiking socks. Your feet are so important. You want to keep them warm and you want to keep them dry. So it's that same thing. You want to wear socks that are made for hiking, that are made to like keep moisture away from your feet because that can cause blisters. And I bring additional warm layers with me, but I typically don't have them out during the day when I'm actually doing the hiking and backpacking, because when you're moving, you're generating a ton of heat. And sometimes I might start out wearing a fleece or something like that, but inevitably, as soon as I'm going up that first hill, I'm gonna start sweating. So it's better to just keep those safely inside my pack, keep them warm and dry for camp, and then I can put them on later when I'm not doing any moving. When I get to camp, in colder weather, I will immediately set up my tent, give myself a little baby wipe down, and then I'll change my clothes into my warm, dry camp layers. This is critical for me in colder weather because I always say to my friends, I don't generate heat unless I'm moving. I'm just a very cold person. I'm a cold sleeper. I'm prone to anemia. I just don't generate a lot of heat unless I'm moving. So I could be totally fine hiking into camp, and then as soon as I stop and I'm sweaty and I'm not moving anymore say it's windy, or maybe it's raining a little, or it's just plain cold, I will very quickly go from being warm and comfortable to being absolutely freaking freezing. So a really good way to avoid this is to change into those dry camp clothes as soon as you get to camp, before your body really has a chance to lose all of its heat to the environment. And my camp clothes for cold weather backpacking include things like a set of Under Armour, long sleeve Under Armour shirt, Under Armour pants. I have a special pair of socks that I'll hike with in cold weather that I only use for sleeping. These could be just another pair of hiking socks, or I like to bring along these fuzzy socks that I get from Old Navy every winter. These are actually Korean, and I lived in Korea for a little bit teaching English, and these were so popular there. I don't know what material they are, but take a look at those up close. They're super fuzzy, they're super warm, they're incredibly lightweight, they're so comfortable. So I just like to have these like warm, comfy socks to sleep in. I know a lot of people also like to bring down booties. On my next thru hike, I probably would consider getting some down booties because down is super lightweight and it packs up really small and it's super warm. I also like to bring some sort of fleece layer, some sort of warm fleece layer, and then a puffy coat to go over that. Right now, I have the Patagonia Micro Puff. This jacket is amazing. So puffies they're an insulating jacket. So they're really lightweight, but they trap heat inside them when they're all zipped up. You can get down or synthetic jackets, lots of different brands. I really like Patagonia. I used a nano puff on the AT, but they recently came out with the micro puff, and this one is even lighter and even warmer. And my nano puff was getting kind of worn out, and I really wanted one with a hood as well. So I ended up doing a ton of research on a bunch of different types of jackets, and I ended up going again with Patagonia. I really like this micro puff. It's really comfortable, it's really warm. I definitely notice a difference between this and my nano puff. I'm not sure if that's because like the jacket is simply just warmer, or it's because my nano puff was just worn out by now. But these jackets are amazing, and living in Colorado, I wear my nano puff and my micro puff all over the place, like to work, as a layer for skiing on really cold days. I take them hiking, I throw them in my day pack. This one only weighs 8 ounces, and it's supposed to keep you warm down into like the lower 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty cool. I often sleep in mine in colder weather, but it's also just awesome for walking around camp. And like I said, you can get synthetic or down puffy jackets depending on your preference. This one's a synthetic, so both kind of have pros and cons to them, but down, if it gets wet, it loses its insulating properties. And I mean, a lot of jackets are treated in some way to help prevent that from happening, but I just, being outdoors a lot and getting caught in the rain so many times while backpacking and being at camp, I just wanted to go with what I thought was a safer option in getting synthetic. So yeah, that's why I chose this one, but both down and synthetic any jacket that's made for this purpose is a great insulator. So you can't go wrong either way. I'll also bring along a beanie and gloves, which I will sometimes wear for when I'm hiking, and sometimes we'll just save those for camp, depending on the weather. Something else that's really important to think about while you're at camp is your sleep system. So this includes your sleeping pad and your sleeping bag. If you don't already have a sleeping pad, you need one if you're gonna be camping out in cold weather. Because you're not just losing heat via the air around you, you're also losing heat via the ground. And the sleeping pad, not only does it make you more comfortable while you're sleeping and hanging out in your tent, it also prevents you from losing heat to the ground. I mean, there are such a wide range of backpacking sleeping pads that you can get, but 2 factors you want to think about when picking out your sleeping pad is, number 1, the weight, because obviously you always want to keep your weight down when you're backpacking. The lower your weight, probably the happier you're gonna be while hiking. I mean, of course, that comes with what's gonna make you more comfortable at camp versus what's gonna make you more comfortable while you're hiking. So it's always a give and take, but you know, try to whittle your weight down where you can. And like if you're thinking about weight when you're picking out a sleeping pad, that will definitely be helpful because the weight ranges of sleeping pads vary quite a lot. But anyway, so you want to think about weight and you want to think about the R value. The R value is basically the measurement that is used to tell you how insulating a sleeping pad is. So a lower R value sleeping pad, like a 1.3, is gonna not keep you nearly as warm as a higher value sleeping pad, such as one that is an R value of 4 or 5. I personally went with the Thermarest Women's Neo Air X Light sleeping pad for these reasons. So it's not the lightest of the light sleeping pad, but it is one of the lighter ones. This is 12 ounces, and it's one that you have to blow up yourself or get a little pump for. I just blow it up. But the R value is the true reason I went with this one. This has a 5.4 R value, and I'm a very cold sleeper. And so I was looking for a sleeping pad that was gonna keep me, you know, as warm as possible at night. So I went the high R value one. This isn't, I will say, it's not the most comfortable sleeping pad that I have ever owned, but it is so important to me to try to trap as much heat around myself and in my tent as possible while I'm camping, since I do sleep so cold. So I think that this one for me was a really nice kind of middle ground between having something that's, you know, maybe really comfortable and a little heavier and not as high of an R value versus this one that is pretty darn lightweight. And the R value, when you think about how much this weighs, is excellent. I definitely, since I got this sleeping pad, been keeping a little warmer than I was before I got it. Next, let's talk about your sleeping bag. So if you're doing 3-season camping, you probably want a sleeping bag that's gonna be rated down to at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep in mind, if you're a woman, you probably are sleeping colder than a man. So 20 degrees Fahrenheit is the survival rating, not the comfort rating. And oftentimes this rating is different for men and women. Anyway, just like with a puffy jacket, you can get a synthetic or a down sleeping bag. Synthetic sleeping bags do tend to be heavier, but of course there are various reasons for wanting synthetic. They do better if they get wet. If you have any animal rights issues, you might want to consider getting synthetic. But nothing, from what I've read and what I've heard, nothing compares to down with its insulating properties for something like a sleeping bag when you compare the warmth to weight ratio. So I actually, even though I have a synthetic puffy, I have a down sleeping bag because I am such a cold sleeper. I did a ton of research on this sleeping bag before I decided to get it. I got this one after the AT because I was often at the beginning of the AT like extremely cold. So I wanted my next sleeping bag for all my subsequent backpacking trips, the ones I do in Colorado and hopefully future through hiking opportunities. I wanted something that was gonna be much lighter than what I had on the AT and also keep me really warm. So I ended up going with a Western Mountaineering ultralight sleeping bag, and I freaking love this sleeping bag. So I was like hell-bent on getting one of the warmest sleeping bags that I could for a 20-degree rating. And all of my research led me to this one, and this sleeping bag is amazing. So as I mentioned with the puffy, like down is insulating. So basically it traps all of your heat in, right? So when I first get into this sleeping bag on a cold night, I'm not always super warm. Like sometimes I'm still a little like shivering. It takes me a little while to warm up, but I often wake up in the night just from a sound outside or because I have to pee or whatever. And I will be so toasty warm inside this sleeping bag because my own heat that I've generated has filled up the sleeping bag and it just traps it in there and keeps me so freaking toasty warm. So I would recommend this sleeping bag to anyone who is a cold sleeper because that is like a main problem that I tend to have while I'm camping or backpacking or whatever is that I'm really cold while I sleep. But this sleeping bag has changed my backpacking life. So anyway, that's my views on that sleeping bag specifically. But obviously there are lots of options out there. And I also, in addition to the sleeping bag, I also bring along a sleeping bag liner. This one I think is a silk polyester blend from Sea to Summit. I'll put all of these products down in links in the show notes in case you guys are interested in these ones specifically. But of course, like I said, there are tons of options out there. So anyway, this is a silk polyester blend from Sea to Summit, and it adds a few degrees. It keeps you a little bit warmer than if you just had the sleeping bag. But bonus, it also keeps your sleeping bag clean. In addition to that, so like I said, I always change into camp clothes when I get to camp, but then my hiking clothes are often wet. I don't want to just like put those out in my tent somewhere or outside my tent somewhere when it's going to be below freezing, because if they're wet with sweat, what's going to happen to them? They're going to freeze. So I often will sleep with my clothes to help them stay a little warmer and hopefully get a little bit dry in the night. So I don't like to put those like wet, dirty clothes in my sleeping bag, because I don't wash my sleeping bag a ton because it can damage it, right? So instead, I put those clothes at the bottom of my sleeping bag liner and sleep with them so that they're not super freezing when I have to put them on again in the morning to go hiking. And hopefully they get a little bit dry in the night and stay a little bit warm. Another really valuable trick for staying warm at night when you're backpacking is to bring along a Nalgene water bottle or another water bottle that you can put hot water into. So this is safe. You can actually put boiling water or hot water into a Nalgene bottle and it won't damage it. I know that you want to save on weight. Most of the time I just bring smart water bottles because they're super lightweight when I'm backpacking, but if it's gonna be really cold, I'll bring one water bottle that is something like a Nalgene. This actually is one that I specifically brought on the AT and I still have it. These things last forever. But the purpose being that I can put hot water in this before I go to bed and bring it with me into my sleeping bag, and that helps, warm me up and warm up my sleeping bag while I'm in there. So hopefully that'll trap more heat in my sleeping bag, trap more heat in my tent. And I mean, it's just like the old fashioned sleeping with a water bottle, or like a hot water bottle, a hot water bag. So that's a nice little trick when it's really cold. I will also occasionally, if it's gonna be really cold, I will bring along hand warmers and or toe warmers. Again, these are not something that I bring along all the time, and certainly not for every night that I'm out on the trail, because that's wasteful and it's extra weight and it's extra trash. But I tend to bring a couple of these along when I think it's gonna be really cold, or if I've been having some really cold nights out on the trail and it's kind of messing with my brain and bringing down morale. I think it's nice to just have these and help you warm up on the really cold times. If I'm feeling really freezing before I get in my sleeping bag for the night as well, I'll do, some jumping jacks or take a little jogging lap around camp to warm myself up before I get in my sleeping bag, again, because it's insulating and you want to bring some heat with you into the sleeping bag. In addition, I will occasionally have a hot herbal tea before I get into my sleeping bag. I always have a hot meal when I'm backpacking, even if it's not cold out. I just love at the end of the day having a hot meal, like a nice meal. But when it's really freezing out, I will also bring along some herbal teas, and I'll occasionally drink one of those before I go to sleep. I would probably do this every night because I think it's really lovely to have an herbal tea at camp, especially when it's cold out. But I don't want to have to wake up to pee in the middle of the night, so I try to be a little careful with that. Or if I have a dinner with a lot of liquids, I probably won't have an herbal tea afterwards, but it is a really nice treat on those cold nights. And having a hot drink like that, by the way, actually raises your body temperature. So again, great to do before you get into that insulating sleeping bag. So those are my tips, but I also wanted to leave you with some signs of hypothermia and things to look out for. These come from the CDC, and these are shivering, feeling super exhausted or drowsy, confusion, fumbling hands, memory loss, and slurred speech. Lastly, don't forget to eat and drink while you're out on trail. If you are dehydrated, this can make you lose heat more quickly, which can lead to hypothermia. And of course, you want to make sure that you're fueling your body. Fats are a really good option for long-term energy, and carbohydrates, of course, give you quick energy. Okay guys, thanks for watching. If you have any additional tips that you'd like to share for cold weather backpacking, camping, and hiking, drop those in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you got some value out of it. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you specifically would like me to cover about backpacking or hiking. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate the support, and I'll talk to you all later.